Welcome, one and all, to the Success Curious podcast. It's your man Andy here, and we have got an international vibe on our hands today. Englishman recording in Australia, chatting to an American in Boston, and my word, tell you what, Nick, the world seems to think that America is getting a little bit stupid right now. But then I speak to someone like you and faith is restored. Nick Hutchison is the CEO and founder of Book Thinkers, a best-selling author, keynote speaker, top-rated podcast host. And my gosh, if you go and have a look at his podcast and you basically see the who's who of entrepreneurship and everything thought leader these days. He is the founder of Book Thinkers Inc., and it's a business dedicated to helping authors and readers fulfill their potential in the personal development space. He's got over 100,000 followers in his midst. And I tell you what, having got to know him over the course of the last couple of months, he's just a genuinely good lad who gives us stuff about what he loves to do. And his passion has very much turned into something much, much more. Nick, it's an absolute delight to have you on the Success Curious podcast. How the devil are you, sir?
Andy, I'm doing well. I need you to introduce me every time I walk out on a stage. I think I'd feel better about myself every time. That was a great
Man,
introduction.
man, honestly, I'm trying to make a thing of my intros, but I just genuinely get excited when I get to talk to people like yourself and then share you with my little community because, man, I really am looking forward to digging into this whole topic of literature and its role in success. You obviously have become really obsessed with books and literature, especially in this personal development space. But before we crack on, give everybody a bit of an idea, as a bit of an elevator spiel as to who you are and your journey to this point.
And I have the reputation of the United States on my back, so I'm feeling the pressure,
Yeah.
Andy.
He's a
Uh,
Boston boy as well, team. So super proud East Coast boy.
Super proud, super proud. So here's my backstory, or at least what's relevant from it. When I was growing up, I was more of the athlete stereotype, not really much of the academic. So when I was in middle school, high school, and even college or university, whatever you want to call it, you couldn't catch me reading a book. I wasn't interested in reading or implementing or really applying myself outside of in the gym, in the dining hall, and having fun, right? That was my brand for a long time. But everything changed for me when I took an internship going into my senior year of college at a local software company. And my boss at the time, Kyle, who was the director of sales, he was a cool guy. He was young, he was making a lot of money, he drove a brand new BMW, and he would bring me on local sales trips. And some of those local sales trips, he'd get tired of hearing me talk and tell him about how great I was, even though I was 20 years old and hadn't done anything with my life yet. And he would put on these business podcasts where successful people would show up and provide free value, all of the secrets to life in 60 minutes or less. And he told me one time, he said, Nick, listening to the same song or the same playlist on the way to and from work, that's never going to change your life. But the right podcast might, and that's why I listen to them. And so, what did I do? I started listening to podcasts. And within a couple of weeks of listening to one on the way to work, one on the way back from work, I started to hear the same books mentioned over and over and over and over and over again. Books that we've all heard of, like Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, or How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Kiyosaki. And I just thought to myself, sorry if you can hear the baby in the background. I thought to myself,
Hey, he's got Boston lungs, right? He's gonna be a loud. He's gonna be a loud boy, right? He's gonna be
yes, he is.
loud.
And so I just thought to myself, if these people that I want to be like are giving credit to the books that they read for their success, I would be an idiot if I didn't follow in their footsteps.
Mhm.
And even though I don't think reading is cool, even though I'm not being taught in business school to read personal development books, even though my friends aren't doing it, my family's not doing it, I'll give it a try. And so I went to my local Barnes& and Noble bookstore, which is a US book chain. I got a stack of books, and man, I've been hooked ever since. For the last 10 years, I've been reading 50 to 100 books a year. I'm obsessed with the personal development and the business book space, and I think that it is the best way to learn.
I'm going to dig into a whole bunch of things that you just said there over the course of this. I'm interested though, before I ask you what your definition of a successful human is, you mentioned there, you said there, I'd be an idiot if I didn't follow what these things were doing, right? And this is kind of like the theme for today's conversation, man, because you can, it's an absolutely fair statement. And yet, and it's so prevalent in society these days, personal development and so on and so forth. And yet, the majority of society, I mean, they can't all be idiots, right? And yet they're still not doing these things that are just proven to be the success formulas when it comes to life, right? Big fat question that could have a multitude of answers. But man, what do you think the principal reason is that for people to not pick up the breadcrumbs?
People are distracted. There are far more short-term entertaining options than putting your nose into a book at the exclusion of all of the other fun activities
Mhm.
and studying success or studying health or studying relationships or studying spirituality. Because the return on that time and money, you won't see it for a long time. It's tough to delay gratification. It's not built into us. We're not wired to see the fruit on the tree and say, I'll come back tomorrow for that, right?
Mhm.
We all live in this world of scarcity, and that's our default programming. And so we focus on getting those short term dopamine hits. And every single day, those platforms become more addicting and they promise better content, more entertaining content, crazier content. And variability increases dopamine. Every time you swipe down and your news feed on whatever app refreshes and there's something new and fun and chaotic and divisive and entertain, like of course that's going to suck your attention away. And so I think most people are asleep at the wheel. I think most people think to themselves, I'll be Superman or Superwoman tomorrow. I'll deal with it tomorrow. And then they just kick the can down the road for the rest of their lives. If you want to know how seriously I take this, I have a tattoo on my chest that says Memento Mori, which is remember you're going to die. And
Yep.
every single day, I'm reminded of the fact that I don't want to be on my deathbed looking back saying, I wish I did more. I wish I took advantage of all of the information available to me and I built a life that I'm proud of. And so most people sitting there watching Netflix for 5, 6 hours a day, watching Instagram reels for 5, 6 hours a day, they just need to be whacked in the head and they need to wake up to the fact that they don't remember what they watched yesterday. They don't even remember the main characters in the Netflix shows they watched a month ago.
Mm,
It's not meaningful. It
mm.
doesn't create anything long term. It's not fruitful. It doesn't serve their future self. And so I think that's why most people don't take advantage is they're just prioritizing short-term dopamine hits.
Oh, totally. I think I think it's being referred to as a bit of an epidemic, right? Or a pandemic of some description where this dopamine addiction is really hampering the existence of humanity in a big way, in a big way. It's very interesting. And me and my partner have been talking about this whole topic of death recently, right? So I'm in the process of getting a tattoo designed where it's gonna basically say on my forearm, there is only today, right? And relate and then hook it to a tattoo that I've already got of that is a like it's an ode to my cousin who unfortunately passed away. And she was only 19, and it's really interesting how this addiction for dopamine is creating almost like a slave culture to the way in which humanity is being run, right? And it's it you want to call it scary, but it's almost feeling like it's getting to that point of inevitability, which is even worse almost, right? When you think about it, right? But it's really interesting, and I'm really looking forward to hearing some of your solutions around that. Now, before my editor gets the shits with me and has to go hunting like a Where's Waldo for this key question that we ask everybody, I want to ask you, my friend, what your definition of a successful human is. I have this belief, as per my book, that it has got four elements that live in an ecosystem: success, influence, connection, and happiness, and they all survive with each other, and they can't survive without each other. Nick Hutchison, what is your definition of a successful human?
I'll start by telling you what a successful human is not.
Ooh.
When I first got into this space 10 years ago, I was obsessed with financial success. And I started reading every iconic entrepreneurship biography that I could get my hands on. Books like Steve Jobs by Walter Isaacson. And I read a book on Bezos, and I read a book on Musk, and I read a book on all of these entrepreneurs who are financially successful. And then you start to realize, oh, wow, they prioritized money over their health, or they prioritized money over their relationships, or they prioritized money over their happiness, or money over their spirituality, and it never works out.
Mm.
And so that was what I thought success meant. And then I started to meet these people. I started to meet incredible personal development types. And they would have these horrible relationships with themselves, or horrible relationships with their body, or horrible relationships with the people around them, yet they were famous. And so I thought, okay, well, fame definitely doesn't mean you're successful either. And so how do I define it today? I think it is the holistic balance or harmony between different categories, just like you're highlighting, and very much the same kind of feeling, maybe different words. I think about health, I think about wealth, I think about relationships, spirituality, and happiness. And I think if you can feed every one of those values on a regular basis and you don't neglect any of them, then you can end up becoming a very successful person. And so in my early 30s, I'm 31 years old. Even though I don't have as much money as a lot of the other people that we might be talking about, I think I'm more successful than they are because I feed those five categories and I have a peace that passes all understanding, stoic joy. Like I genuinely love my life. And there aren't a lot of people that we think of successful or think of as successful that could say the same thing and actually mean it. So yeah, that's my definition is a holistic balance or harmony between those five categories.
Could you then summarize it by saying that a successful human is a human at peace?
Yes, I think so.
That's really interesting, man. And now I love the fact you're the first person that says I'll define what a successful human is not. That's the first here on the show. So well done to you there. Bang, bang, bang. Very good. Very, very good. Now this is easy to say, harder to do, and I want to bring a practicality to this conversation, my man, because I always hear what my audience is saying, right? As you incredible people are talking, right? And the first thing that popped into my head just then was it's all well and good for this smart ass 31-year-old lad to be telling me that he fills all his cups and he's got peace and joy and all this sort of stuff. But the reality for you, my man, is the fact that you are a father of a young lad. You've got a better half that is knee deep in a couple of organizations and absolutely killing it in that world in her own right, right? You've got life happening around you. You're living in an economy that is so helter skelter right now. You don't know whether you're coming or going, right? So it's not like you're devoid of all of these life-based problems, right? I want to ask you first off though, before we get stuck into the literatures thing, um, as a young dad, how have you found your transition from a responsibility point of view in terms of going from being, I am responsible for myself, for having this ultimate responsibility and of being a father? How have you found that transition in terms of being able to keep maintaining those five elements of your life?
Uh, it's a great question. and I know you've been through this as well. I prepared for it. I really did. And I do wanna state that I'm not pretending like my life is perfect. I've had amazing blunders throughout the last 10 years. I've lost tons of money here, ruined relationships over there. Like, I've had a ton of mess ups, but I expect failure as part of the process, and so it doesn't surprise me when it happens, and it doesn't push me off course. One of the most fundamental lessons that I've gotten from all of this literature and personal development is the idea that there's a difference between what is within my control and what is outside of my control. It's a Stoic principle.
Mhm.
And so I don't pay much attention to what's outside of my control, like the economy. Irrelevant for my day to day in the present moment right now. It doesn't matter what's going to happen tomorrow because I don't have control over it.
Mm.
And I think the same thing as I was preparing to become a dad. Like, I had 9 months to prepare for it, to step into that role, to become the type of person that would be able to balance those 5 categories and maintain a sense of peace when the baby stepped in. I was proactive, right? Instead of reactive. And so I think without it sounding like a cheap answer, man, like I worked at it. I read a ton of books, I interviewed a bunch of dads, I asked for a ton of advice. I hired more people into my company so I could delegate more responsibilities and create a little bit more free time and flexibility, which I knew I was going to need.
Mm.
And my wife and I had a ton of amazing conversations because we knew that the relationship was going to be put to the test.
Mm.
And we covered a lot of the things that I feel like a lot of other couples don't get a chance to talk about because I was like, I got to figure this out, right? I'm listening to the advice from the people around me who have successful families, and they're telling me you got to watch out for A, B, C, D, and E. And I was like, let's go tackle those things now while we have the peace. Um, so I hope that doesn't sound like a cheap answer, but it was like it felt like a natural transition because I spent a lot of time preparing for it.
Nah, I actually think it's quite a distance from being a cheap answer, man, to be perfectly honest, because as you were talking there, I was sort of feeling back into my experience, right? And essentially, I had a bit of a train wreck of a start to fatherhood because I was almost the opposite to what you just said, right? Where I just thought for some stupid reason, I had this inner belief, right, in my veins that I thought I was destined to be an incredible dad, right? I just had it in my head. I'm like, I tell you what, there's one thing that I'm designed to be, and that is a good dad, right? And then all of a sudden, because it's not like I didn't listen to stuff and prepare and watch some videos that were like scarier than any horror movie under the sun about births and all this sort of jazz. And I don't jump and frighten easily, but watching some of them birthing videos that the mother of my kids got me to watch, it was been the only time that I hid behind a pillow, right? The only time,
It is
right?
scary. Yeah.
Oh man. Anyway, so but what one thing that really highlights the dichotomy between you and myself is what you just mentioned there about time. You said just then, I hired a few people into my organization, understanding that I was going to need to have more time to be able to dedicate to my family, right? I went the opposite way in the sense of shit, I've got a kid on the way. I'm going to need to work more in order to earn the money in order to be able to pay for said existence, right? And
Right.
that pressure in itself, Nick, it caused the mental breakdown for me, right? Just that one pressure in itself. So I actually feel that it is actually a tremendously fruitful answer because it's not like the information's not there.
Right, and it wasn't because I had this miraculous idea, it was because I asked people who had been through that transition what they would recommend or what they would have done differently, and had the 2 of us known each other before my son was born, I would have asked you, and you would have told me, "I didn't prepare well, and therefore it was a train wreck." And I would say, "What could you have done differently to prevent that from happening?" And I would have taken your advice and implemented it, right? So
Yeah.
that's, I give a lot of credit to people who have been where I wanna be, they've done it successfully or unsuccessfully, which oftentimes is more valuable feedback,
Mhm.
and then I get to apply what they teach me, right? I take action on it.
Oh man, I love that. I think that's so so cool. And team, for your notes, I think that is a really critical thing that you need to put down. If you are struggling, if you're in a rut, if you're feeling like success is a word that is not associated with your life in any way, shape, or form, just have a listen to what Nick said there around just simply asking questions. Ask questions of people that are further down the track that you want to be on or that you are about to be on. One thing I believe, Nick, and correct, and you disagree if you feel free, if you don't feel that you agree. Um, Gen Z at the minute, there's been loads and loads of studies around the fact that Gen Z, and we would sort of alluded to it earlier on, they have this propensity to discount experience because of the speed, the speed of the world right now, and they feel that they can't afford to spend the time learning from and earning the experience in order to get to where they want to be. They want it to be on the end of their thumb, right? And it's just the way that they're conditioned. It's not their fault in any way, shape, or form. It's just how the world's been presented to them, right? um what's your thoughts on that with respect to the fact that experience does count for a hell of a lot? Because I think that the intergenerational play and the intergenerational conflict that's going on right now, you could say, generally speaking, is that the boomers are going, well, you don't know shit, and the Gen Zs are like, well, you're boring as shit. And so there's a bit of a gap there where there could be a real harmony there. Give us your thoughts on that just quickly.
You're right. There definitely is a little bit of a battle going on there. And all of the success through the lens of harmony that I've experienced in my life is as a result of studying those who have been there and done that. And
Mm,
so I would tell the older generation, maybe you need to change the way you're communicating to make it more fun and exciting.
mm,
And I would tell the younger generation that you need to study subjects so intensely that they become part of you. And you cannot get that through a 30-second TikTok video or a 5-minute video on YouTube.
mm,
You need to get that by fully immersing yourself in content emotionally, understanding who's giving you the content, why they're giving you the content. And it's one of the reasons that I believe in physical paper books, because you are focused on one subject for a long time. There's a great book called The Art of Learning by Joshua Waitzkin. Joshua Waitzkin was both a martial arts champion and a chess champion, like a world grandmaster level chess champion.
oh wow.
One is intellectual, one is physical. And he was able to master both of those disciplines by fully immersing himself, again, so intensely that his subconscious could act on his behalf. You can never get that level of understanding from a quick soundbite.
Mm,
I think that platforms like social media and maybe even book summary apps or ChatGPT, those platforms are great at helping you understand whether or not something is worth studying.
mm.
Maybe it gives you the idea to go check out if that book is going to be a good fit, but it does not replace the activity of fully immersing yourself in the content. And so the younger generation needs to learn that the older generation can condense decades of wisdom. Sorry about that.
Hey, so hey, look, absolutely fine. We've had loads of weird noises on this show, right? I've had one guy whose dad freaking come in on the show and asked me what a podcast was, and I said, mate, it's the thing you're on, man. And I actually kept it in. So, what's the dog's name?
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, so our dog, his name is Pickles. He's a 3-year-old chocolate Labrador. He's the best. But when the garage door goes up like it just did, he goes running downstairs.
Mate, honestly, that bark does not match the name Pickles, right?
I know. He's big too. He's about 100 pounds. Yeah,
Amazing.
he's a big dog too.
Amazing, man. Amazing.
Um, so Andy, my point there, just to wrap it up, was that I think the younger generation needs to recognize that the older generation can condense decades of their greatest life lessons into days of consumption, and that is the best way to accelerate your life, is to consume decades of wisdom in days. It's like a cheat code. You can't get it on social media, you can only get it through a real life experience.
Mate, you are like a walking quote machine. You really, really are. Jeez, I'm gonna need to get a new pen. Honestly, man. Now, I really want to dig into this whole role of literature in the way that success is portrayed, consumed. Like on this point, it's a real good segue, because one concern that I have, and it's why I really respect the Ryan Holidays of the world and whatnot, because I just have, I don't know whether it's borderline cynicism here, a little bit of cynicism coming creeping in, which I really don't like when it does, but I feel that success has become commoditized and it's become commercialized, right? And the way in which it is being broadcast by those that are commoditizing it is creating a greater chasm between the haves and the have nots. And I've got a real problem with that, right? And because you've mentioned already once or twice this whole word why, right? And I think that a lot of people that bring out these PD books, these personal development books or success books or whatever, a lot of the time they leave out the secret sauce because they want to keep making money. They want to keep commoditizing it and not killing that cash cow that they've got, right? I'm really interested to hear your thoughts around this because you would have read a stack of, and no doubt you'd have read a stack of books where you put it down and gone, this is just not, you know what I mean? Give us your thoughts around this whole topic because you are so much in the middle of the eye of this commoditized storm, right? Should we call it? So give us your thoughts on this, man.
You are right. It is a difficult space to navigate. And in fact, I've spent some time thinking about the downsides of personal development, of business
Mm,
content. And so, number one, I think that you need to understand more. I think as a consumer of this information, it's our responsibility to understand the source. Where is it coming from? Who is teaching us? Are they a great mentor? I define a mentor, a proper mentor, as someone who has done what we're looking to do, maybe even at a much greater level, and they've also helped other people achieve that same level of success.
mm,
And that's what's missing is oftentimes we're caught by a like a shiny title that promises something great, only to find out that the author who wrote it never achieved any level of success. And they're talking out of their ass, for lack of a better term.
nice.
And that nobody has ever used what they've written to achieve any level of success either. There's no track record. We just get sucked into the void, the get rich quick snake oil salesman type void, and we believe a false promise. So, as a consumer, let's take the responsibility to slow down, study the person we're about to buy from, and make more of a conscious decision. We have to do that, especially in the world of AI.
Mm,
I also think that a big piece of, like, the success culture that's been commoditized, also some of the responsibility falls on us for not taking action on what we learn. These books and these courses, they are designed to help us visualize a beautiful future. That's a step in the right direction, but that doesn't replace taking action on what we're learning.
mm,
And so a lot of us, it goes back to dopamine. When we visualize the big house or the six pack abs or the healthy relationship, we get a spike of dopamine. Our
mm.
brain can't differentiate between the vision that we're having just in our head and actual reality. So they stop there. And I think sometimes authors, they sell you what you want to be sold. They're trying to give you what you actually need, but then we don't do the work. We don't implement what we're being taught.
Mm.
So Yeah, it's being commoditized, but, like, I actually fall on the side of it's our responsibility as a consumer. Now that we're talking about this out loud, I'm realizing, like, I fall on the side of it's our responsibility as a consumer to differentiate between what is good and what is bad by studying the person delivering it, and then once we make an educated choice, we actually have to take action on what's being given to us, and it will usually work. If they have achieved what we want to achieve and they've helped other people do it in the past, probably gonna work if we apply it too. So,
Mm.
I don't know. I didn't know I was going to go there, but that's kinda how I feel about it.
Mate, it's an interesting take, and it's a take that in all sincerity, I actually totally agree with. We're good at playing the victim at times. When we are a part of the have-nots, right? We look at the haves and go, "Oh, well, screw them." Like I said, when you were talking about those 5 pots of peace that you talk about there, in your world, I could hear some of the have-nots going, "Well, that's all well and good, him saying this, I've got that, I've got responsibilities, I've got that, blah-de-blah-de-blah-de-blah-de-blah." And so there is a degree of victim mentality around this that we need to just get out there and say, right, well, you're finding plenty of excuses right now, and what have you. I'm really interested though in that answer that you talked about there. I'm really, really interested about your commentary around visualization. What just slipped out around visualization? Because something that is 100% legit, and it's not really dawned on me in this sense. Visualization creates a hit of dopamine in itself, which can lead to a false narrative, a false belief as to where your existence currently sits, right? Interesting point, man. We need to dig into that because everybody talks about visualization being so inspiring, and you've got to visualize before you achieve, and visualize the goal, visualize having already achieved it, and visualize, right? Have we stumbled across something that is actually one of the key fundamental issues that's creating a barrier to success for a lot of people because they're so busy visualizing on stuff that no one really, well, unless you want to give me a book or an example of someone that's actually highlighted this, right? Visualization needs to come with a warning symbol, doesn't it?
I agree. I think that visualization is part of the process. It's not the process, right?
Mm,
What does it do? It stops us in our tracks. It makes us feel really good. Now the desire to go change our lives has like faded away a little bit. The anxiety, the uneasiness that got us to take the original action. We visualize, we stop. Now we procrastinate. And visualization becomes the outlet that makes us feel better, and we forget to take action.
mm,
And so you're totally right. I think I think that now are there people that have highlighted this? Yeah, probably. Have I read their books? Probably. But you're right in that it's not the main subject of any books that I've read.
mm,
I think going back to some of the original books like Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, he talks about you have to have a definite purpose, right? That's your why. That's like that's what inspires you to take action. It's the difference between where you are and where you want to be. You recognize that difference, you create a purpose to go fill the gap that starts the original action. Then you need to go out there and study. And that studying is consuming information, it's visualizing the solution. It does have to happen first in your mind, but it then has to translate into your physical reality by taking action.
mm,
And Napoleon Hill, he says, he has this great line. He says, action is the real measure of intelligence. Not
mm.
being able to spit quotes back like I am right now, but being able to take action on them. And I was even Andy, I was listening to a podcast recently where Chris Williamson, the podcaster, he was interviewing Naval Ravikant, and they were talking about this idea of intelligence. I thought it was fascinating. He said, most people think of intelligence as IQ.
Mm.
right? As a measurement of your intellectual capacity. But in the real world, intelligence is just getting what you want out of life,
Yeah.
which for most people is some form of peace, right? And how do you achieve peace? Well, you remove financial scarcity, you remove health scarcity, you remove relationship scarcity, you remove spiritual scarcity. Like you hit all the buckets that I talked about, and peace is the result. And so intelligence should be defined as getting what you want out of life. And
Mhm.
how do you get what you want out of life? You take action on the information that you learn. That's all there is. So, I know I took that in a slightly different direction, but like, yeah, visualization is an important part of the process, but it's not the whole thing. It's just a step.
Mate, I think we're going down a really, really good path with this. I think we really are. And I think this is actually going to be, if people take this in, this is going to be a really critical sort of light bulb moment for a lot of people. I mean, I'm feeling it. I'm feeling it in myself,
Yeah, let's
right?
go.
That the bulb is starting to bloody switch on. And I think we're stumbling across something that's tremendously significant here. Visualization needs to come with a warning label, right? Too much consumption will lead to, right? Will lead to procrastination, failure to go forward, failure to take action, and will lead to your existence staying where the hell it is. Right. It's really, really interesting point, man. We need to start singing from the rooftops about this, because you're right. We have to be able to visualize, but then that visualization needs to then be attached to a practicality of, right, visualization, this is my ideal world, this is where I want it to be. Now, how does that map to where my current existence sits, and what are the bits that I need to then tangibly make a change to in order to make that existence come to be? I feel that people have just got too stuck in a wheel of visualization, that they don't realize that they're on a hamster wheel, not on the road, right? They're running to nowhere as opposed to running somewhere. And I think
Right.
this could be a huge, huge unlock for a lot of people, man.
And let's highlight some other forms of procrastination, right? If you fall into this hamster wheel, buying more books instead of implementing the ones you've already read, that's a form of procrastination, right? Listening to more podcasts or watching more YouTube content instead of taking action on the ones you've already consumed, that's a form of procrastination. Visualizing, let's say you're reading a book on dating and you're visualizing walking up to a girl at the bar and asking her this question that it says in the book and her response, and you have this whole conversation, and then you sit back and you go, that went really well. That didn't actually happen. It just happened in your head, right? Like that's a form of procrastination. And then the act of visualizing becomes your goal because it feels good. And you forget that that's not your actual reality. So, yeah, you're totally right. I think that that's a really cool, we've stumbled on something that should be explored in more detail.
You know what, though? You can relate it as well then to the way that the likes of augmented reality, virtual realities, the metaverse and all that sort of stuff. You can actually hitch this wagon to that
Yeah.
through that process, in the way that society is starting to be molded into this whole, VR is real, is, that's a real existence now, and all this sort of stuff. And you could really call it a bit of a systemic concern here, whereby the visualization of our lives is becoming more important than our actual lives right now. And we are having seen people and technology generate these vehicles to mobilize visualization into feeling like it is your then reality, which is scary, right? When you think about it.
Yeah, if you are an insecure, overweight, unhappy human being who has terrible relationships in the real world, but you can put on a headset and now all of a sudden you're the king or queen of a kingdom and everybody loves you, like it's gotta feel great. And
Yeah.
of course, you'd rather default to that action. And by the way, like your cell phone is a very small version of what I just described because it makes you feel great. It makes it feel like everybody love you. You're just getting constant dopamine hits every 2 seconds. And it doesn't actually serve you in any way, shape, or form outside of that present moment. It doesn't set you up in any way, shape, or form for success. And so this is distraction, man. I remember like my wife and I, we visited Rome, Italy a couple of years ago, and we did a long tour of the Colosseum.
Yep.
And they were telling us that 2,000 years ago, the Colosseum was designed to distract poor people from the fact that they were poor.
Mm.
There was free admission to the games, and you showed up and you sat in the stands and you watched. It wasn't just gladiator battles, it was all sorts of entertainment all the time. So that the rich aristocrats who weren't attending the games, they were just playing power moves behind the scenes, could keep the general population distracted so that they could live great lives in abundance. And so, the phone is the Coliseum today, and so is the VR headset, and so is the visualization that you do instead of taking action. It's designed, like you said earlier, it's a form of slavery. I think that's kind of like the right way to think about it.
Which is, yeah, which is, and that's the thing, right? I mean, you could go all matrix on this thing, right? And say that, we're plugged into a matrix and it is just a form of distraction while our functionality serves to, power those that have, right? Which is a scary thing. But let's flip it on its head though, man. If you can take some visualization medication in control, right? And I'm not saying talking about popping pills now, gang. So FYI, I don't start popping pills. But if we're to talk about this metaphorically and say, if you can regulate the volume of visualization that you have in your existence, it allows you to see your existence for what it is and be able to create a bit of a motivation, an intrinsic motivation that allows you to see a path to where you want to be. And
Absolutely.
it's really interesting. So I sort of became fascinated with 1970s psychology, right? It seemed to, I don't know, it seemed to be a bit of a boom in psychology. I don't know whether it's because of all the psychedelics that were taken. I'm not sure, but there's this one by Decci that talks about the intrinsic motivation being comprising of three components, being autonomy, competence, and relatability and relatedness, right? And when we talk about how visualization plays a part in how success is formed for you as a human being, gang, and relating this to what Nick's been talking about here around understanding your true purpose, but then being able to attach it to action because that's where intelligence truly lies. And that relating this piece is the thing that most people tend to struggle with, right? Because all of the knowledge is in all of them books, all of the competence is all them books that's on the shelf that Nick's got behind him, yeah. But I know I've fallen foul of buying a book and then by osmosis feeling like I'm more intelligent, right?
Me too. Yeah.
I mean, how it's the reason why airports sell so many books, right? Because it makes us feel better about ourselves as we buy a book, think, right, I'm more intelligent, and then we fall asleep and start drooling all over ourselves in the plane, right? So, mate, it's a really, really interesting, really, really interesting topic that we have stumbled across that was on none of our agendas today, which is incredible. And I think that this is going to be such a powerful episode for people to get a grip of. I really, really do. Now, my friends, I'm very, very conscious that you've got a boy that's going to demand your attention very, very shortly. So I wanna wrap this up without a rush, because I could talk to you for yonks, man. I could talk to you for hours. You're such a cool guy, and I love the fact that you acknowledge, you acknowledge your gaps in awareness and your gaps in knowledge, but you acknowledge the fact that, well, shit, I just took action to bloody solve them gaps, right? So it doesn't have to get more complicated than that. But one question that I always ask all of my guests as we wrap up the show is, you're obviously, success is progress, right? And you're obviously progressing to the next best version of yourself. As you look ahead, what would you say is the one thing, or the one big thing that's missing from Nick Hutchison's arsenal, shall we say, or skill set or awareness, when it comes to that next version of success for you?
More kids.
Okay.
More kids. No, hey,
Mate,
here's
wait, whoa. Before you get, I'm not letting you get away. Does your missus know about this?
Yeah, I remind her often how many I break bad. I think she's still getting used to the first one.
Yeah, fair.
Uh, okay, so that is a real answer, but let me give a little bit of a different answer. And again, I if there's somebody in the audience that feels uncomfortable by my answer, ask why you feel uncomfortable by my answer. I want more of what I have today, Andy. Like I genuinely mean that. I think that while I'm optimizing for peace, I'm also optimizing for progress. Just like you said, progress is fulfillment, progress is happiness, progress is everything. And so I'm constantly looking for ways to become healthier, wealthier, happier, have better relationships, and improve my relationship to God. Like, I am just because perfection isn't technically attainable doesn't mean I'm going to stop trying to pursue it. I'm
Mm,
always looking for new ways to experiment, be a guinea pig, have fun, improve my life. That's incredibly important to me. And if I stopped, if I became complacent, I would not be at peace. So it's a
mm,
component of the equation. You get what I'm saying? Like,
mm,
just because I experience peace right now, that's not because I'm sitting back drinking mimosas on the beach all day. That would not be peace.
mm,
Peace is the consistent pursuit of perfection and progress while knowing it's not technically achievable, but still being okay with that. Like
mm.
one foot off the edge, always slightly overcommitted and uncomfortable, but the other foot firmly planted back in my reality. And that's, I want more of everything. But as long as I maintain that harmony between all of my different categories, it's kind of a hard thing to articulate, but there's no big missing thing that I'm currently aware of at least, and I'm open to that changing for sure.
Look, man. No, you know what though? Because that could be taken as arrogant, but in reality, if you are happy and you are at peace with your existence, why wouldn't you be looking for ways to keep adding to that current existence as opposed to filling gaps when you've worked so damn hard to eradicate as many of those gaps as you possibly can? Right? It's really, really interesting. Well, tell me then, let me ask you just one quick adjunct to that. What's the latest thing? What's the very latest sort of big penny drop moment that you've learned over, as you've been continuing your progress towards perfection? What's been the last big lesson that you've learned, right? And where did it come from?
Hmm. That's a great question. Big lesson that I learned, and where did it come from? I've got like 1,000 things rumbling through my brain right now. I think it probably happened today when we talked about visualization becoming one of procrastination. But before that, a subject that I've gotten incredibly into over the last, call it 6 months or year, is biohacking. Thinking of biology, our biology, as an information technology, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everything is quantifiable, everything can be measured, everything can be improved. And so when I think about my health, it's not from a vanity perspective of I want to look young, but I want to feel young. I want to feel energized because that'll allow me to be a better husband, a better father, a better employer, a better service provider to our customer base, a better guest on podcasts. I had 15 calls today, 15 back-to-back calls today. You're my last one. And I feel like I could just do 15 more, And it's because I focus so much on optimizing for energy. And it's not just okay, here's the big aha moment that I had. I'm getting to it. It's not just the food that I eat as fuel. It's not just the exercise that I participate in as a way to get endorphins that flood my system and make me feel good all day. Those are important, but it's actually being connected to work that I enjoy. And I was reading a book recently, and the author, her name's Sylvia, she talked about as we age, it's incredibly important from an energy perspective to be aligned with what we do to the point that it pulls us out of bed and that we're excited about it. And so I think that was my biggest takeaway. The book is called Who's in Charge? It was a leadership book, but she said to be a great leader, you have to have amazing energy, an abundance of energy. So I'm like obsessed with energy right now, and not just from a biological standpoint, but from like a purpose and a consciousness standpoint. So that was probably the biggest aha. And when I meet people who are healthy and they eat the right things, but they still don't have energy, I'm like, that's a purpose issue. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, that was a big thing that I've been talking about over the last week, I think.
Man, I completely agree with that. And actually, to your point, there's some synergy going on here because I've come across an incredible human being, Dr. Christy Goodwin, who is utilizing, wearable technology in order to help guide people to greater levels of success through the numbers, right? Through the numbers. Like I used to have an Apple Watch, and I'd be like, right, great. You're just reminding me that I'm shit at sleeping and that my heart rate's up, right? What the hell am I supposed to do with this shit, right? So I ended up binning it because it just gave me anxiety because it just reminded me that I'm shit at stuff. Right. So I'm actually gonna be working. I'm literally engaged with her last week because I'm gonna be working with her to work on my biomechanics to improve my energy levels and all this sort of stuff, my circadian rhythms and all that sort of jazz to optimize my own performance, man. And yeah, mate, it's a really, really cool way of creating free wins, right?
Yes.
You listen to your body, the amount of free wins that you can create for yourself will be such a it's like it's a no-brainer when you think about it from a monetary point of view. You go spend all this money on all this stuff, right? And all these herbs and medicines and all this sort of shit, programs and courses. But if you just looked at the numbers within your own body, you'll probably find the answer to a whole bunch of the equations that you're struggling with, right?
Oh yeah. I am very deep into this subject, so we could do a whole nother episode on it, but from the different wearables and the different, the different free resources like you're talking about. Better sleep is free. Better hydration, for the most part, is free. Exercise, when done in your home, body weight exercises and stuff, is free. Want to know what else is free? Fasting, going without food, is free, and it improves every biomarker inside of your body. And so there are so many of these free resources available that will improve your energy and therefore your output and therefore help you make more money and be a better partner. Like, the ripple effect is crazy.
Oh man, I couldn't agree more, and I'm excited for it. I tell you what, Nick, I'm gonna have to let you go because you got to go be the most important person, which is a dad to that boy of yours. And I tell you what, though, I cannot thank you enough for your time, man. This has been one of the most fun chats. I know that your day's ending, but mine's just beginning, and I'm buzzing, man. This is going to be such an awesome day, and I've got to thank you for that. So, Nick Hutchison, thank you so much for joining us, team. You are a nutter if you don't follow this guy. Like I said, listen to his podcast as well, because one thing that drew me to Nick in the first place was I looked at his podcast and I'm like, the first 10 episodes of this thing was like the who's who of everything. This lad's got to know something that I clearly don't. And I tell you what, man, there's a whole bunch of stuff that you know that I don't. And I'm super grateful that we've got to connect, my friend. So, Nick, thank you so much for joining me on the Success Curious podcast.
Thank you very much. And listen, for anybody that has made it this far, thank you for paying attention and show some love to Andy. It takes a lot of effort to create a podcast like this. And I think the greatest reward for a podcaster is a positive review or an email or a DM with some feedback. And so reach out, show some support, keep the energy alive, keep it buzzing, and share it with a couple of friends.
Mate, thank you so much for the little plug. I really appreciate it, gang. Now, team, make sure that you go and review your notes on this one. Look at how visualization is affecting your life. Are you visualizing a little bit too much, maybe? And that visualization's harming your reality a little bit, or have you got it in good measure? Team, on behalf of Nick and myself, stay safe, healthy, happy. Enjoy the day for you, whatever you've got going on ahead. And we'll speak to you again on the next time on the next Success Curious episode. Take care, team.